Hello everyone, and thank you so much for being here. A warm welcome to today's webinar on AI and finance, the impact on operations and subscription management. We've got a power-packed session ahead, and I hope you're as excited as I am to dive into this super relevant and fast-evolving topic. At Younium, we're actively working with AI, and today we're very proud to share insights and knowledge about it, and also give you a little sneak peek into our new AI functionality. So, who am I? My name is Hannah, and I will be your host today. I'm a marketing coordinator at Younium, and with me today are our two experts, the stars of the show, our speakers. A warm welcome to Niclas Lilja and Eric Künzel. And to introduce them a bit further, let's start with Niclas. So Niclas is the founder and CEO of Younium. He has a background of 20 plus years in SaaS software, and he's passionate about building whatever it's companies, organizations, spreadsheets, or even Lego. And he also loves numbers and metrics. And then we also have Eric Künzel, subscription expert. Eric is a senior account executive and also our go-to AI expert here at Younium when it comes to finance, subscription management, and even internal processes within our company. He's heavily involved in how we use AI internally to help us streamline our processes. So he's all about AI and is the perfect fit for this discussion today. But before we dive in, let me quickly go over a few housekeeping details to set some expectations for today. So the webinar will last 40 to 50 minutes, and out of this time frame, we have reserved 10 minutes at the end for some questions. And this webinar is being recorded, so you can expect the recording to land in your inbox in the next couple of days. And don't be shy, feel free to send your questions anytime throughout the webinar, either in the chat or in the Q&A box. And if we don't manage to answer all of your questions during the Q&A at the end, we'll make sure to also send you our responses by email together with the recording later. But before I hand over the stage, let's just quickly go over the agenda for today. So we'll begin with a brief introduction, and then we'll dive straight into the discussion, starting with how AI is transforming finance. And next, we'll explore AI for automation in subscription management, and also cover some key challenges and opportunities. And then you'll get a little sneak peek of Younium AI. And finally, we'll wrap up with the Q&A session. So like I mentioned before, feel free to drop your questions at any point during the webinar. And yeah, again, thank you so much for being here and for joining us today. And that's all from me for now. So I'll hand it over to you, Niclas and Eric.
Thank you, Hannah. What a great intro. Looking forward to this for quite some time now. I guess AI is not only something relevant at Younium, but also across the world in all companies. And there's a lot of discussion about it. And I think it's going to be great spending a few minutes today, about a few different perspectives on this. And I wanted also to connect to, like, before the end of last year, we gathered some insights from industry experts. So we analyzed market shifts and what were the trends, etc. And then we put together our 2025 SaaS trends report. And one of the biggest trends, not very surprisingly, of course, but that's really stood out, was AI's growing role in finance and subscription management. So we had people like Chris Ortega talking about, the importance of predictive AI for financial analysis and forecasting. We had Jonas Nygård talking about like harnessing AI to anticipate customer behavior. One such area could, for example, be churn prediction, right? We also had Ben Murray talking about that AI will play a larger role in SaaS finance by automating tasks like month-end close and reporting. We had Ellen Köhler and Simone Rischenberg talking about the strategic focus that needs to expand beyond operations, making it really a critical priority, and that should be to always evaluate how AI could disrupt a company's business model and support the CEO and the leadership team. So everything, right? It's all about like predicting things. It's about doing things smarter. It's tactics, it's strategy, etc. So I think it's very fair to say that we're in this phase with AI where it's not all set and defined yet. And I personally find that very, very exciting. And I think it also comes into this perfect storm with, everything has to be more efficient, right? More efficient than ever, and it should be sustainable, efficient growth. And then we have AI coming in on top of that, making it even more dynamic, right? So would really love not only to talk about what's in the past, but also hearing a bit from you in the audience, and do a bit of a poll here, and see what you do expect from AI to improve your finance operations. I hope very much that it's very self-explanatory how to use the poll, and it looks that way because we're really seeing the numbers coming in. And it's still moving, so I'm gonna try to, let's make a drum roll soon, and then we'll soon get to wrap this up. I think we can do that about now, right? So maybe we can show these answers to all. And Eric, what do you say when looking at these answers? We had 5 different options, right? Automate repetitive tasks, increase forecasting accuracy, improve decision making with real-time data, streamline month-end close and reporting, or optimize pricing and subscription management.
It's much like I expected, I would say. I think nowadays in finance, we see a lot of people, being extremely busy with those very low value repetitive tasks. So I can see that there's a, that everybody wants to automate those things and use AI for them. I think the other part where it's about improve decision making with real-time data, I think that's also super strategic. I think a lot of companies, especially in the B2B SaaS space, really struggle to get their data right and get good access to it. So having the opportunity to actually use that. I mean, look at the budgeting process in itself, right? Like how much companies sit there, try to do forecasting, try to do planning, and really understand what's happening in their database, because you want to use the data to do all kinds of things. You want to reduce your churn, you want to, increase your revenue and so on. So yeah, I totally see where everybody here is coming from. And I think it's a nice transition to also talk about those are all, slightly different expectations going to different areas of the finance and operations, and talk a little bit of like what's out there in terms of like approach when you look at AI and finance. And I would say if you take it very high level, you see solutions with kind of like AI as core. Like it's a solution where the core is built on AI, so it's like full running AI. It's this, you sometimes hear that it's like the black box scenario, right? So you shove the data in, and then the AI just transitions and does everything in the background. So very little human interaction. And then you have AI enhanced, what I would call it. So you have already a robust platform and a robust structure, and then you have AI on top, sitting on top of that. And that is always, requiring human decision making. And then it's probably about finding the right spot between the two that is absolutely right for you. Because the one is obviously, super efficient, while the other one, but has no control, or less control, let's say that, because there is no human interaction. So what we see, especially in the B2B SaaS space, you want to have some sort of control to be able to access that and ensure what's happening. And I would say in general, what you also see, which is quite interesting, is that you see a slower adoption of AI in the finance space. And that is because the risk is much, much greater. If I draw a comparison here, I don't know if anybody here runs HubSpot and has tried HubSpot AI. Well, yeah, it works to some extent, but the expectations but if it's bad, it's not as poorly. Like if I create the wrong list from that, it's not having a direct impact on my metrics. It doesn't have a direct impact on a customer receiving a bad invoice or something, or even having bad, accounting in the background that you may get audited on. So I think that's also a reason why finance and AI adoption is a bit at a slower pace than I would say many other industries you see out there. And I'm also curious to kind of like see how that transitioning into more AI adoption by finance is gonna, imply on the cost of things. So I think you can look at it at a cost perspective, like if you buy a solution, is there going to be an additional cost? So do I need to pay for a certain amount of prompts or something like that? Which means if you do your budgets and planning, you need to consider, well, there might be a flexible cost coming at me as well. And not just in one solution, that is across many, many, many solutions where this could happen. But it's also, if you sit there as a CFO and look at your own data and your own margins, if you add AI, depending on how much you add to your product, it will also slim your margins a little bit. So how much can you compensate there with like gaining or adding revenue with AI versus how much do I have to spend if I, buy a pre-built model? But what do you think about the role of AI specifically like in subscription management, Niclas?
I think it actually plays really well, not surprisingly, but let's give some background to that. I think when we talk to both like existing customers and also prospects, I mean, everyone is always looking for, how to be more efficient, how to, increase scalability. We often hear about the, also needing to, try out, iterate new pricing models. Maybe, you're buying companies, maybe you are trying out a new revenue stream, maybe you're going from sales-led growth to product-led growth, or, doing some other pivot or in some way. And I think AI can definitely help enhancing that, both in terms of maybe saving up some time for others to do more forward engaging activities. But I think it could also lead to new insights because of the vast data masses that we see. And it's sometimes difficult to see, what's what in that big pool of data. But then, of course, it's also like when we say automation in subscription management, that sounds very niched. I think when we look at like expanding it across all the components, so it could be, the go-to-market part. How do you fuel your CRMs, your CPQs, your sales navigators with the right data for your sales to do what they're supposed to do? How do you use it to, deploy paywalls to, enable that online strategy that you have, or how do you get your partners going with partner polls? So it's all that go-to-market part. That's one sector, and I think that is very much to do with like more customer satisfaction, iterating, trying new things, optimizing pricing, etc. And then after we have like contracts, when we have all those events flooding into, then we get into like subscription management, tracking the entire life cycle. Then there's a different problem, right? Then it's like managing that data, making sure the data is accurate, that it's consistent. Moving on, usage, recurring billing. How do we get the data together? Accounts receivable. How do we get payments in, right? Revenue recognition. How do we make sure that we're complying with all rules? And finally, insights. So it's quite a vast area, isn't it? And to some extent, we don't really hear anyone saying, we want AI, right? No one really wants AI for AI's sake. You want efficiency, you want scalability, you want to be able to iterate, experiment, you want to deploy your go-to-market motions real quick. So I can definitely see AI playing, multiple roles in that. And what do you think, Eric?
I think I really like what you're saying there. It's like nobody really wants AI. It's such an interesting perspective, but so true. Nobody cares about AI. They want to get efficient. If AI does it or something else, and it works with AI or without AI, the outcome is important. I so much agree with that. I think if you look at the finance and specifically the subscription management space, it's kind of like iterating again, like what AI can do and kind of cluster that a little bit to really understand the opportunities here. The one part is the one that everybody knows. It's conversational AI, right? So it's the one that everybody knows from ChatGPT. It's, I would say, the fastest adoption everywhere And what it does, it's like the conversational AI is pretty much just, on your input querying on the data that you provided with. A real life example is if you run Microsoft's Copilot, for example, and have it query on data that you have laying on SharePoint or similar things. I think that's pretty standard. You give in a prompt and you get a response out of it. And there's also like specific models for specific types of what they should actually perform. From that part, I would say the second step of evolving, so to say, is like assistant AI. So it's an AI that can actually will do certain things and analyzations by itself and give that feedback to you. Typical example here is FP&A and making suggestions for FP&A. So it doesn't just react when you ask it something, but it will actually query on the data and iterate by itself and see if it finds any patterns and inform you. And then I would say like the last step you have is what I talked before, like this black box, is you have autonomous AI that does the whole thing completely by itself, a whole process per definition. And there's still a difference between having like an AI core product, which just runs on AI in the core system, or if you have an existing platform. If we take Younium, for example, right? We already have Younium, everything is there, the structure is there, the processes are there. If we now take autonomous AI, we could apply it to a very specific scenario. Let's say, for example, payments. We all know matching payments can be super, super painful. And you can have AI that just goes in and understands and matches those payments as much as they can for certain. So it's still a difference between having autonomous AI for a certain part of your solution versus having your whole solution built just on or by AI.
Mm.
And if you look at subscription management specifically from our experience, I think the biggest opportunities here are, like people said in the beginning, it's analytics. It's, querying on that big load of data that you have there. I think if I look at an order in Younium, it has like 500 data endpoints. And then if you look into the insights, you want to make custom calculations. You want to have it to understand like how many people here pull out data from different systems, put it into this Google Sheet to be able to query on it and make their custom calculations. If you have an AI sitting on top that can do that, that would just be fantastic. I think the other part is what we see, getting data into a solution, because we all know, whoever implemented an ERP here, for example, or a subscription management solution, going from a very unstructured place of data to a very structured one is a transition phase that requires effort. And I think if you have a proper AI sitting on top of that is good at specifically this task, it has the capabilities to transition your unstructured data into structured data. And then, like forecasting and planning, I think is a very, very big opportunity. As I said before, we sit so much with like doing budgets and forecasts for next year, running through different scenarios. If you can go to an AI, it's just like, what happens to my ARR next year if I grow this country by 5%, this country by 10%, and have 3% churn all over the board, and you just get the number out. I mean, let's be honest, how fast we could compare numbers there to find the right scenarios. And it's a lot of times it's a little bit of a guessing game when we do budgets and planning in every company. So that gives you more foundation to really stand behind that, especially if you're a company that goes into like funding rounds and investments. You have so much more foundation if you can prove your numbers and the different scenarios with that, like best case, worst case, and so on. That's what I'm thinking. Do you see any more potential or use cases?
Those were really good. I guess like if we're talking a bit more about those, I think we can see it in numerous systems like text creation AI tools, if I may call it that. And I think we have parts of that around our system as well, like an email to a customer, whether it's happy news that they are super successful, or it's like hey, we want your payment. But I think like all of those things, I could also see, you know, like invoice layouts, etc. But mainly I would say customer communication and using that and just speed up things. I guess already today, many with me are copying text into a chat GPT and then asking for some suggestions and then copying it back and why do the copying, right? But maybe also like when you get into more like more technical scenarios, like where you want to pull in usage data from multiple platforms, and you want to do a bit of transformation on the data, maybe it's not fits perfectly. I could see that going from some sort of fairly simple coding maybe, but still going to like some easy no-code solution powered by AI. And I think that could also help with just speeding up things and making it easier. But then, I mean, it could also be more advanced, right? Maybe it's like, at least I see that prices when I go and look for a flight, for instance, they tend to change depending on, I don't know, who I am, where I am, what I do, etc., etc. So that is maybe not that big in B2B, but still, I could see more variable pricing coming into play as well, especially if we're going to have more associated costs that is fluctuating. It's going to be interesting for, you know, all the companies out there to like find ways to mitigate that risk, and maybe that is like a live price optimization by AI kind of functionality. So yeah,
I think, yeah,
high
I
to
think
low, right?
Yeah, and I think what it can also do is like a typical scenario is like if maybe in a pure B2B with a customer success manager setting and everything, it could also be that you have an AI kind of like running your data, looking for, you know, patterns and stuff, and it's suggesting upgrades somewhere, right?
Yep.
So something that is, it can be really hard to manage if a customer success manager manages 50, 60, 70 accounts. How good control do they have of understanding where is an opportunity to upsell now, to increase the tier because they have so much overage each month,
Yep.
and you can increase your committed revenue. So I think I agree with that part.
Definitely. And on that, I think also like as more and more companies need to explore more and more venues, maybe you know you have like 10 years of experience doing like sales-led growth, and all of a sudden you venture into product-led growth or you acquire a company. Maybe it's also a way of kind of adding a bit of skills and capabilities where you don't have as much historically. So yeah, definitely a lot of different opportunities, right? With AI. Maybe there are some challenges as well. Should we step into that as well? What is
Yeah.
your take on that? Is it all good, or are there challenges?
I think everybody is aware of at least some of the challenges, or at least of the results of those challenges. I think we all have interacted with AI. Let's take the conversational part here, where we probably didn't get, like, we meant something different than what we got out. So I think there's multiple parts or layers you wanna look at challenges when you kind of like utilizing AI. The one is, as a vendor, when you offer it, or even if you can choose when you use it, is choose the right model, right? So there's certain models are very good for conversational AI, others are very good for predictive AI analyzing. So that's, I think, kind of like the first step where I can see companies go fairly wrong and just pick an easy one and try to adapt it for everything. One of the main parts, because we all understand what AI can do best these days, is analyzing big sets of data. But it also means it needs to be robust data, good data, structured data. Otherwise, you just can't expect the AI, unless you have your own trained LLM, you can't expect the AI to really understand that. So be aware of that. Having a good foundation where you set it on top is super important. control of AI, and that is from a customer perspective, but also from a vendor perspective. So if I look at ChatGPT, because it's a prominent example, right? ChatGPT started and it was pretty much like you interact with it, but you can't change really how it thinks. Then they added within a chat, it would learn what was discussed in that chat. And then it would, take that into consideration when replying to you. You would never change the model in itself, but it kind of like has your own personalization in that sense. So think about that when adopting AI, like how much can I adjust the AI to make it very fit to my case? Might that be the vendor controlling what the customer gets as an outcome, or might that be me? If you buy an AI solution, enterprise search option, for example, right? You buy an enterprise search, you will need to train that AI. It's not really training, but you will need to help it learn, understand what you do. So there is an interface for it. You have the ability to train it on. I think that's an important part and often underestimated and a common hurdle in that space. And I think the last one I really comes to mind is like over reliance. Like if you just push it in and you expect AI is going to do it for you, that's probably not going to work. And I think we've seen it in many cases. I think many overpromised, also like many general AI tools overpromised on that part, where you're just like, yeah, just let AI do it. I'm in sales, so this ghostwriting, for example. I mean, it's come a long way, but if you look at the steps it took, it required a lot of effort to get some useful things out of it. And now you can think about like how do they apply to subscription management and to us and to Younium. I think it's the same thing, right? We need to choose the right models. I shared before what are the different things that you can expect to do, or that you guys expect to do in there. Choose the right model for each thing that you want to perform there. Luckily, I would say we're in a really good space with having data structure and quality. But you need to obviously control how that data goes in and make sure, you have proper workflows set up and ensure that the data quality stays consistently good. And over reliance, I think I said that earlier, it's challenging, I would say. Can you really just push it in and expect the AI to manage your full finance process? I mean,
I mean, I think, it's going to be difficult to blame the AI, right?
yeah.
I think it will last 10 years until you hear a CFO saying, when being questioned about the numbers from an auditor, like, well, talk to the AI. That's not going to happen, right? So I think like being that, I think, was it Ben Murray who said that, being a steward of the AI initiatives, and maybe that is a good way of looking at it, and like how do we, leverage and make use of it, but how do we also keep it within some sort of guardrails? And I also think, like, I mean, we've been discussing this a lot internally as well, right? When it comes to data in, why not just like let it pull data in however it wants to? Super quick, super easy. Well, we think it's gonna slow our customers down the line, right? If we don't, I mean, we already know what a good data structure could look like. Why not make use of that? Why sort of step down and start from the beginning? And let's use that good structure. Let's find a way of using AI to populate data, enrich data, validate data, etc., but still within some guardrails. So
I think these days not everybody needs to be an expert on AI, but I think everybody working in in a space where you are tightly integrated with solutions and stuff, you should have a basic understanding of AI, because it will help you so much to understand, why am I potentially not getting the right outcome? Like, what can I change here? Like, is it on the prompting part or whatever it might be? So I think everybody needs to understand, like, where is the best application for AI in their specific business and in their specific needs.
And you said that, right? It wasn't the really training of the model, but at least some kind of training, and that it learns. And I guess, like, if you then do that in the wrong way, I guess you're enforcing a bad behavior. So I guess you would then sort of put a bad behavior at scale as well. Is that a reasonable way of putting it? Like you have to be a bit knowledgeable in like what you want to achieve and how to do that, and how, knowing kind of, are we in the
Yeah.
right direction here or not?
Yeah, and it requires yeah, absolutely, and it requires some testing. Like you probably all made that kind of like observation before, where you had an input to AI and then you just changed one word, which from your perspective doesn't change the meaning of it, but the AI suddenly, reacts completely different to it. And I think what is important, because we also want to, I just said everybody should understand AI. Maybe I take a step back and basically there's two different approaches to utilizing AI. The one is you buy a pre-built AI, which is you buy the ChatGPT engine or something like that, or you buy an open source LLM, and then you host that yourself. And then there are certain files that you can kind of like basic train it, but then you host it yourself and you train it yourself. While on a pre-built one, you can't train, like you can't change the database. They have, procedures in place to train their AI. So if you can overcome that, but be aware that this is some work that you need to put in. So to overcome that, what you need to do is kind of like everybody probably heard of prompt engineering. So it's kind of like having a mid layer that takes that, whatever the input from the customer is, kind of like transitions that into understandable language and tells the AI how to work with that, whatever's coming in, and process that. And that is always going to require some testing. So that's also why we in Younium, instantly as we had it up and running, included customers in it to run some tests there, get their feedback on it, see where the issues are, to understand like how does that mid layer, you might call it, knowledge or training mid layer or whatever, can transition whatever input you have, and that comes out the right way. Because imagine like 10 different customers or 50 different users asking roughly the same thing, but in a different way. How can we ensure that they all get an accurate and the same outcome? And that's super important when you talk finance and, accounting data and so on. So yeah, I think don't underestimate the importance of ensuring also the data quality outcome. We all know that little sentence, AI can make mistakes, and it does, and of course, but we as a company, as a vendor, we need to ensure to reduce that likeliness of errors as much as possible.
So on many levels, know your models, right? Know what direction you're heading. Be aware that you need to do some testing. Don't just rely on the AI to figure everything out and do it all by themselves. Really, really good. But still, I think we're still leaning on the big opportunities. They are not like bogged down by the challenges, right?
No, sure. No.
What about going forward then? Can you talk a bit about the capabilities of the Younium AI, Eric?
Sure. I'd be happy to. We plugged it here and there, but as everybody's here, I thought we'll give you kind of like a sneak peek of the Younium AI and talk a little bit about what we have at the moment, but also where we're going to in the future. Fantastic. Cool. It's nothing too crazy, but I thought it might help to have a quick look into how it runs here. Right. So we have it up and running in our conversational AI, conversational analytics AI. So the AI right now has access to all the analytics, the analytical data in Younium, which means you can query on it. It's a conversational AI, so it's not just one prompt. You can actually like follow up and have a conversation on that prompt. So here you can say, it gives an initial prompt to figure out the ARR by country, but then on that prompt, I can also let it do a percentage distribution. And that's how you can really like interact with it. It's so much more dynamic than what we had, or that what you have before when you just have a standard, which is still there and still important. But it adds that new layer of the potential to interact with your data even more than it was before.
Especially getting those ad hoc queries done, right? I can totally see myself here prepping some some PowerPoint for some meeting or something, and you kind of, oh, what's the distribution like? Or, how did we do there? Or, and maybe you don't have that prepped report for that. It's quite neat to go and just ask.
Absolutely. And I have those situations when I talk to prospects and I ask them any specific metrics because it's important for me to understand their business, to make good recommendations. And then I was like, what's your NRR, for example, right? And it's like, yeah, maybe. So it takes them some time. Imagine, I always envision them just having the tool, popping it up and asking the question in there and having like your answer 2 seconds later. That's so, yeah, so cool. And this is what we have already, it's out there, ready for people to use. But I also want to give you like a forecast, like what's our roadmap on this? Like, what are we looking to deliver on when it comes to Younium AI? I think the natural next steps are also adding that layer of planning and forecasting. Also something, many people said at the beginning in the poll. So being able to do any kind of those scenarios, imagine this happens, what would happen to my budgets, understanding the cash flow, important for CFOs, what's our cash flow going to be in the coming months, depending on that, what happens if all of my contracts or all of my invoices get paid 30 days late, how would that impact my our cash flow? I think that's super, super powerful. The next one is also something we mentioned earlier is AI-powered data migration. So using AI to transition from some more unstructured data to a more structured data set, and being able to, help people ramp up much, much faster. This is also important, not just for our new customers, but also for our existing ones. We have many customers that have a merchant acquire strategy. So they buy new companies. It's great for them having Younium because they just add another legal entity in their Younium tenant and ready to go. But then still, that business might come from a total different place when it comes to data structure. So having the ability to get them really up and running quick and merge into your business, super helpful. And I would say the last part we're looking at right now is the AI actually, and we tested that and it's already working, but like high on the roadmap as well to release that, is the AI actually performing tasks for you. So, set up an account, make an index adjustment on all orders from Germany. But on all of them, we work super closely with our customers because they know best what they need. And as we only have B2B SaaS companies as customers, it's very specific for the industry and we'll get really good feedback on that. Yeah, and any questions on that Younium AI, shoot it out. If you want to test it, let us know. I'm happy on your input. If you have suggestions on what Younium AI should be capable of doing, we're always having an open ear and curious, yeah, what you're thinking. Good. I think that was a pretty packed session. Questions, Hannah, how are you?
Yes. No, we actually did get a couple of questions in, and also thank you so much. What a great session. Huge thank you to both of you, and thank you to all of you who sent us the questions. And maybe you're ready to take some right away.
Shoot.
Shoot.
Yes. So first question we have here in the chat is, when discussing hurdles, you seem to focus primarily on data quality, right input, right output, using the right tool for the right needs. But what about security and privacy/EU regulations and GDPR?
Yeah.
Can I say
Super.
something? Yeah, we're both very keen here. Can I say something and then you go? But I want to stress that one of the key things that we kind of realized and looked into in the beginning was like, how do we keep data isolated and separated and doing it all by the book, and I think we felt like having a single platform with a very unified way of dealing with data really helps us in securing this, because we can do it on a very low level. We don't have the need to do like multiple integrations, multiple products, multiple suites, getting it all to, so I think that has been very, very important for us to really isolate the data. So I think that is one part of it, right? But I think also you have all more details as well, but like when choosing models, when choosing this, we've also done some measures around that, right, Eric?
Yeah, and I would say AI in itself came a long way, or the companies offering AI came a long way when it comes to compliance. If we take a very, an example, if you run something directly on Microsoft Azure, for example, it's locally hosted. They have almost all tools that offer any kind of data processing on enterprise level in that direction have regulations that your data is isolated, so your data is not shared, and the model is not trained on it. So there's a bunch of like rules and regulations. I do agree that probably from a government perspective in different countries and regions of the world, there still needs to be more done on how that data is going to be transferred and regulated and processed. But I think you totally have the capabilities of adapting like a super secure solution these days, with very reliable security measurements. And I think one thing that I don't know if that's where the question kind of like comes from, but the most concerns are people, like, you put in data and the data is going to be used somewhere else, and then worstly, AI knows, or ChatGPT knows everything about your business and about your employees and about your customers. And I do agree there is an extremely high risk, especially if you don't have something adapted, that your employees just go out there, use ChatGPT, upload your, I don't know, financial forecasting for next year to ChatGPT and let it analyze it. Well, then it's out there, and then it can be used and trained upon. So, but every time you buy an enterprise model to enterprise conditions, those have restricted data processing. They're not allowed to process your data. There's retention rates, retention details in the agreements as well. I hope that answered it from two perspectives.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And then we have actually another question, and that is, what is the long-term direction for Younium when it comes to AI?
All right. I think yeah, you heard Eric talk a bit about like the roadmap for AI and combining that. I mean, we do think it is important. We need to leverage AI because it's in our mission on how to help companies do things smarter, more efficient, and how to scale, right? So it fits in that sense. At the same time, I still want to stress that no one wants AI for AI, right? So we're quite obsessed now with supporting different ways of hybrid moves. For one example would be a lot of companies being very sales-led driven in the past, looking into how to also incorporate a bit of product-led, whether it's like acquisition or it's more organic development. And when doing that, we want to make sure that we get help from AI in how to analyze data, how to set up things, be quicker. So I definitely see it as a supporting thing. And what we really, I mean, in the end, we're gonna collect a lot of data, and all companies are gonna collect a lot of their own data on their customers, on their subscriptions, on the usage that they want to use. So really making sure that the data model is robust, it's efficient, and it's also very accessible for AI to really do what it's best at, as you said, Eric, like analyze and working on vast amounts of data. So that's really the way we're heading.
Yeah, and I think, companies transitioning. I mean, we work a lot with, B2B SaaS companies. Many have like high value contracts, many sales driven stuff, but almost all of them are transitioning into that hybrid model, which is great. But their expertise is usually not in the PLG part, their expertise in the SLG part.
Yeah.
So having AI to help you understand patterns with the PLG part as you add to them, and where you're probably less knowledgeable at that stage, can give you a huge advantage, because they have different parameters and different metrics and different behaviors, those two revenue streams. And then if you have AI to
And usually quite like a bit more fast moving as well, whereas like B2B enterprise sort of sales-led kind of contracts are typically longer, higher contract value, etc. But maybe a bit static in that sense as well. In comparison to if you do a product-led growth, it's going to be more about volume. It's likely to be less contract value, but more data, more subscriptions, more touch points, more before it is a contract, more trial, more conversions. So I think you're absolutely right in that.
Yeah. And yeah, no, I agree with you.
Yes. And then we actually have maybe time for one last question. And that is, how could you incorporate other data into Younium AI?
Yeah, I generally, and not just for Younium AI, but for Younium in itself, I get that question quite a lot. But then when you have that capability of Younium AI, of course, you are trying to find out, is there even more data I can process? And I think there's multiple ways and directions to look at that. I think the one thing is data into Younium, usually in most situations, comes either from a CRM, we are one of our like ready to go connectors, or it comes into Younium via an API from their own platform. Both of those scenarios have an easy way of pushing more data in. I don't know if I want to have some kind of like specific segmentations coming from my CRM into Younium to segment my customers. That can be done fairly easily and enrich the data that I already have by more dimensions. And the same thing you can do when you integrate your own platform to Younium. Just create a custom field, push more data in. I think that's a more narrow approach of it. If you look into the larger scale, I think what we see, and I mentioned it before with enterprise search these days, a lot of companies are looking for solutions that sit on top of all of your data and can query all of your data. So I think you can enrich Younium to a certain point, but there is going to be natural limitations, because otherwise you would need to integrate Younium to all of your other platforms to be able to fetch that data. And I think for that, the trend I see in the industry is actually companies that have different solutions and use AI within those solutions. But then if they get to this point, it's a little bit like a BI tool, right? You have a BI tool sitting on top of your whole tech stack that integrates with everything. And the same is with if you want to go into like an enterprise AI that sits on top of all of your data, pulls the right stuff and the good quality data from Younium, pulls it from HubSpot, pulls it from NetSuite, whatever tools you run. So I think you can extend it to a certain point directly with Younium fairly easily to enrich data there. But if you then look globally on your company, you probably will get to the point, or I see all companies at one point get to the point where they have something sitting on top of everything.
Yes, perfect. Thank you. And maybe we can also just take a super quick question to Joachim's question here that came in the chat. And that is, will you integrate to other systems to get input from CRMs and etc. for AI-led planning and forecasting of ACV and ARR?
Maybe I can say something. I mean, you did a bit of like the roadmap where we're heading. While not saying it's a hard-coded part of our roadmap this year, it's definitely something that we're going to look into. I mean, in Younium, you typically have sort of the existing world. And then we will, look into how can we enrich with that kind of data. But I think we also need to open up for multiple sources. So for some companies, it's only the CRM. For some companies, it will be like data from a CRM, but it could also be from web traffic to their pricing page, etc. So there could be multiple sources of that. It could also be a customer success system looking into potential upsells and things like that. So we're definitely looking into that as well.
Perfect. Thank you. I think that wraps up our Q&A for today. And thank you again so much for all of your questions. But before we end, we also want to take the opportunity to just highlight Younium AI and Younium once again. If you want to learn more, see more about what Younium AI can do or what Younium can do for your company, feel free to contact us. And yeah, a big thank you once again, Eric and Niclas, for your incredible insights you shared today.